Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Track at DragonCon 2024. Thank you so much for joining us. We have Loren Collins with us again. We love him. He's a wonder. Yay! Yes, there you got your fan club here. That's fantastic. Okay, and he's a local Atlanta attorney, but y'all know that. And then also, I just learned that there's like a Rocky Horror sort of version of Strange New Worlds, the musical episode. And he played Sam Kirk. That's amazing. Yep. And the whole cast or a bunch of the cast members were sitting there on the front row watching. So good job with that.
Thank you.
So anyway, all right, here you go. Thanks, Loren, for joining us.
Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, thank you all for coming here today, and for with the mild confusion we had as to scheduling, but glad to have this back. No, it's not your problem. No, I'm just glad everybody was here today, and I didn't show up to an empty room. To get right into this, because I made a PowerPoint presentation, and I don't know how long it's going to take me to get through it. So to get right to it, back in 2016, we'll start there. There was a claim that went viral on Twitter, as I understand it, claiming that some 3 million U.S. non-citizens had voted in the 2016 election. I would show you a picture of that tweet, but it was deleted. So, yeah. Unfortunately, it got so much attention, it specifically attracted the attention of one particular notable person, the President of the United States. The fellow who was behind this, the one who deleted his tweet later, which is why I don't have a copy of it, was a fellow out of Texas, more or less, nowadays these days, named Greg Phillips. He had said that he and his tech group had identified, 3 million non-citizen votes that had been cast in the 2016 election. Mr. Trump thought this was particularly valuable for his rhetoric, because that's the number he more or less lost the popular vote by to Hillary Clinton. And a lot of people listened to him about that. Now, have you ever seen any proof of the 3 million non-citizen votes? You haven't, because when people followed up with Mr. Phillips subsequently, he promised that was verified. That number was verified. He and his team had proven it. They were going to produce that evidence. It was coming, and still coming. A year later, he finally said, okay, yes, we verified it. We told you it was coming, but we don't have the money to finish the forensic audit that we really need in order to provide that proof, so it never came. It's now been, obviously, 8 years. That 3 million has never come. But Mr. Phillips continued to be involved in this sort of thing. He was also connected to another woman named Catherine Engelbrecht, specifically out of Texas. She had an organization called True the Vote. Someone's familiar with True the Vote. They had been around for a while. They really started to make a name for themselves after the 2000 election with claims of all kinds of election fraud, specifically involving drop boxes. That's what they turned their attention to after 2020. Specifically in the form of a documentary, and I'm sorry, documentary by Dinesh D'Souza by the name of 2,000 Mules. This rather depressingly has a very high rating on Rotten Tomatoes. 90-something or 100%. It's viewer rating, because in order to review it and have a verified rating on Rotten Tomatoes, you had to have bought a ticket. So this was only reviewed by people who saw 2,000 Mules in theaters, which is people who believe Dinesh D'Souza. The main claim behind the movie here was that there had been Engelbrecht and Phillips claimed that their organization, True the Vote, had done a lot of analysis with video and with cell phone data that they had requested, and they had found a suspicious pattern of cell phone data moving from Dropbox to Dropbox in different cities, such as Atlanta. And then when they pulled surveillance video from different counties, including rather prominently in the film Gwinnett and Fulton. In fact, if you watch the movie, and I do not recommend it, all of the surveillance video you see in the film from Dropboxes, other than the fake, they created some filmed versions of themselves. All the actual footage they show in the movie is, I believe, from Fulton or Gwinnett County, and most of it's from Gwinnett. They claimed they identified the cell phone patterns by themselves, showed the people moving between drop boxes. They claimed they narrowed this down looking at people who visited at least 10 drop boxes and went to at least 5 different non-government organizations where they claimed people were picking up ballots that then they were putting in to drop boxes 5 or 10 or 20 at a time. They claimed that when they got this video, it was matching up with the cell phone data, and that the patterns was further demonstrated by what they saw in the video, that they were seeing out-of-state cars, that they were seeing people wearing gloves all the time, that people were doing this like in the dark of night, when other people weren't around and they could secret their way in and out. By the way, this is a sign. Two signs actually. I personally pulled off the road up in Alpharetta. I think someone made these just to advertise the movie, and I decided I did not want it advertised, so I took them home. This, for instance, is one of the videos they show in the movie. You can see how dark and suspicious that looks. That's because they darkened the video. Yeah, the one on the right is the actual raw footage that came from Fulton County. I believe that's in front of a library, if I remember correctly. Similarly, this, in fact, is just down the road. This is the Fulton County Library that's basically just south of the Weston. The one on the right, again, is the correct one. They did not provide timestamps for most of these videos they included in the film. This was the only fella in the movie, that I believe, there was one other woman who had gloves on. This is right outside the Gwinnett County Elections Office. He has one blue glove on. It's also clearly the glove that he uses to handle the box. He takes it off right after. Doesn't quite match up with their hypothesis. They were trying to keep fingerprints off the ballot because he handles the ballot with his non-gloved hand. He handles the drop box that he doesn't want to touch in the middle of COVID with the blue glove. Now, and like I said, they claimed, again, in the film, that the video backed up their hypothesis. People are doing, the pattern they're seeing is people in the middle of the night, where other people aren't around. This is the middle of the night, apparently. This is also, as I said, you'll see this for the next couple of slides. This is just outside the Gwinnett County main elections office. And they apparently had, again, 2,000 mules to choose from. But for their movie, they chose this guy, this woman, this guy, who also decided to do his crimes in front of several other people. This woman who decided to do it on a day of early voting in front of an entire crowd of people who were voting. And this fella, who I will come back to later, because as this man, his name is Andrews, as they showed this footage in the film, Dinesh D'Souza's voiceover was, "What you are seeing is a crime. Those are, I believe, fraudulent ballots or fake ballots." They were not. They were his family's ballots. And I know his name because he did not appreciate being called a criminal in a film. Dinesh D'Souza, however, again, claimed as part of his film, based on what True the Vote had been telling him, again, these people were going to 10, 20, 50 drop boxes. You know, that's what he claimed the evidence showed. And if you don't know, if the video is not convincing you, what about the geo-tracking? What about all the cell phone data they had pulled that they could track people moving, specifically from Dropbox to Dropbox to Dropbox? And they claimed in interviews and everything afterwards that this wasn't just like within a 50-yard radius. No. This was within like feet of a Dropbox. That's how accurate the cell phone data was. People were also asked, for instance, I showed you several screenshots a second ago of video they included in the movie. I don't expect you to have tracked all of that, but none of those, most of those were those one location, and I didn't show you the same person twice in any of them, much less at multiple drop boxes. Asked in an interview, why doesn't the movie show the same person going to multiple drop boxes as the movie claims? And they said, we do have video showing the same person in multiple drop boxes, but we took it out because it was poor quality, so we just didn't put it in the movie. So this, I don't know how well this is showing up there on the screen. At the beginning of the movie, it begins with this nice, very cool graphic of patterns moving around what I eventually determined is sort of a map of downtown Atlanta. This is mildly interesting as a map. It's also completely fake. This isn't mapped on any of the data they actually had. They just made this up as a graphic. The arrows actually mean, as far as I can tell, absolutely nothing, because they just made up the path that they just pointed arrows at places on it. I don't even think they map onto where drop boxes were. The dots don't map onto drop boxes. There are, I want to stress, there are not that many drop boxes in downtown Atlanta. It's also not the only thing they faked in the movie. For instance, they show this Dropbox transfer form that was for Gwinnett County. That's not a real form. This is the form, the actual one. They copied some of the information. They also randomly faked some of the other information on it. They get the date wrong for some insane reason. They changed the names of the people who signed it, but they just made it up. So the movie, like I said, does not, it shows this is geotracking. They made that up. The movie doesn't show any other, like, patterns of cars moving from Dropbox to Dropbox like they said they had. It'd be an easy enough thing to animate for someone with a budget, I would imagine. But they didn't put it in the movie. And they didn't release it afterwards. They did incidentally say, right after the movie came out, they put out a trailer saying, like, it's all going, we're going to put it all out. We're going to put it all, like, all the geotracking, all the video, it's going to go all on the website. I'm not going to be covering that later because they never did that. They were full of crap. But they did give some presentations because they were invited by some government officials in different states to give presentations at different state senate and such committee meetings. And at least one of them in Wisconsin, they produced some of their geotracking, where they claim, like, this is, we got all the little cell phone pings that pinged different locations, and we mapped it onto a location. Now, it's not sequenced by time. It doesn't show, like, the direction someone was going over time. It doesn't specifically say over how many hours this was. But they gave 8 different maps showing, I think, over a single day, this was the pattern. And they said that this pattern shows people going to drop boxes. We're going to label where they went out of their way to, like, go to these drop boxes. This is how persuasive this is. That's one of these maps. Just all over the Milwaukee, and then just like they found 3 locations that are near drop boxes, and they said, yeah, that's where they went to. That's where this person was driving to, was those 3 locations. That's another map. That's another one. I want to stress here, if you can read that at the bottom, they're saying this person did all that driving around Milwaukee to hit 5 locations. That map, that one, again, so on. This is my personal favorite. Because I halfway suspect this is a bus, honestly. Or an Uber car or something. Again, the number here is 4. It's claiming this person drove all over the city of Milwaukee to hit each one of those 4 locations one time apiece. So yeah, that's the only time they produced any significant maps, and they're useless. It shows that this is the quality of the data they were relying on, and why they don't want to show more of it. Now, they did produce something else somewhat similar up in Pennsylvania. They got to testify in front of a Pennsylvania committee, too, for Philadelphia County. Some of their data here was a little confusing, but they showed this one map. They did not show this full resolution. This is the highest resolution I could pull off a screenshot. But I was able to deduce from that list there on the right what it's listing. What it's claiming is that this person drove all over Philadelphia County over a period of time. I believe it was, I forget over how much time, but claimed that this person visited 138 drop boxes over, again, some period of time in Philadelphia County. They showed this one illustration of this. And they listed, if you can make it out, you can't, but in the little box over there, how many visits to each location. And I was able to look at this, where the drop boxes were, figure out what these locations were. Now, one location was 31, 23, 22, 19, 15. Now, the place that they say this person visited the most, as a mule, to take illegal, to criminally move ballots around and deposit them in order to taint the system, to get illegal, I should back up. They're slightly inconsistent on, like, where the fraudulent ballots are coming from. Dinesh D'Souza seems to believe they're just fake ballots. True the Vote wants to claim they're possibly legal ballots, but where they're getting them from, it's not a super well thought through conspiracy theory, is what I'm trying to say. But regardless, the whole operation should be somewhat secretive. the whole notion is these people are doing criminal activity. So the first location, the person, and again, I want to stress, this is the person they chose. They chose one mule to illustrate this is the person. That one person visited the Darby Department of Human Resources 31 times. The Darby Department of Human Resources is the 4th floor of an election building. That their mule apparently decided to drive to an election building and go to the 4th floor of that building to deposit ballots 31 times. Obviously not under secret of night because the doors are locked. But they kept doing that. After that, another government building. After that, literally the election office in City Hall in Philadelphia, 22 times. My personal favorite was a 5th on the list, 15 times. They said this criminal mule went 15 times to the Milbourne Municipal Police Office, which, if you can tell in the back there, is literally the end of a dead-end road. That someone would drive down to the end of a dead-end road in front of a police office, get out of their car, sneak up, put ballots in front of the in the box in front of the police office, get back in their car and drive away. Maybe it's just me, but if I was going to have a whole bunch of fraudulent or fraudulent, non-fraudulent ballots, whatever they are, if it's a crime for me to move these ballots around. For instance, in Georgia, you're not supposed to take a ballot other than a family member's ballot or someone you're caring for. There's some limits, but mostly family. You're not supposed to move someone else's ballot around. If you want to get away with that, you would think the natural thing to do is just drop them in a mailbox somewhere, just in a blue mailbox, as opposed to driving, because, again, if it's going to be illegal in Philadelphia to be handling someone else's ballot, to drive in front of a police station and get out of your car and do it there. But that's their story. They didn't publicly produce this, but they did at one point turn over, supposedly, some of their information to the FBI and the GBI. Well, I think the FBI and then the FBI shared it with the GBI. Part of the reason True the Vote does this is to say they're working with the FBI in interviews and whatnot. They're not. They're just nuisances. They're just giving stuff to the FBI. But then they can say they're collaborating. The GBI released a letter listing off some of the documents that the FBI shared with them, claiming that multiple devices, these were spreadsheets, devices within 100 feet of an organization or a Dropbox, devices of interest. 207 of 279 devices passed one address. What's that address? We're all curious. But the GBI head wrote this letter and said, yeah, we reviewed all this. There's nothing here. It's mildly interesting. It doesn't prove anything. We're not going to do an investigation. So if you have anything more, give it to us. They didn't give anything else. But because it had the names of these spreadsheets, the actual names of the documents themselves, and because the FBI did have them. Incidentally, I made an open records request to the GBI. GBI said, we don't have any of that. We never did. We borrowed it from the FBI. We gave it back. They never gave us anything. So I made an open records request with the FBI. I requested, for instance, the Georgia 279 devices nationwide, October to January 5th. That was when the Georgia runoff was here. Most everything I got was redacted, but I did get this one page. It had captions on another page, which told me some of this information. And over there on the far right, where it says, yes, that column was named dwelling. So it says this is a dwelling. That's all they gave me, but it says that's a dwelling. So I looked up that address. I looked up that address and those coordinates. It's up near Marietta. It's not a dwelling. It's a business park. It's sort of between what do I have here? I think it's a flooring store. It's like the back alley behind a flooring store. But they said in the one line I was given out of this open records request that it's a dwelling. It does not instill confidence in me that there's much to believe in the rest of the redacted part of that document. What they also did, True the Vote, is back in late 2021, November, they made some complaints to the Georgia State Election Board. If you're local, you may have heard about the Georgia State Election Board lately. They've been in the news. Probably will continue to be, unfortunately. For those of you from out of town, I hope your election boards are doing better. Yes, back in November of 21, about 6 months before the 20,000 Mules movie came out, they sent a multi-page complaint to the Georgia State Election Board, claiming that they had uncovered this whole ballot harvesting, ballot trafficking operation. And they claimed that this had all come from, the story they told in the complaint was the inspiration for all of this came from a John Doe whistleblower who had come forward to them. Because back in 2000, before the election, their interest really wasn't, as far as I can tell, in drop boxes at all. They thought there was fraud because they're preternaturally just want to assume there's fraud. That's their grift. But this guy apparently, they claim someone came forward to them and said, I was hired by a non-government organization to like go around and pick up ballots from people and then take them to one organization. And then I was supposed to go to another organization and pick up ballots from them. And then I was supposed to go around to drop boxes and put 5 or 10 ballots at a time into different drop boxes, spread them around so that I couldn't be tracked. And that's why they then pulled the video and the cell phone data, and all of a sudden, all of this data that they're pulling matches this John Doe. State Election Board, the Georgia Secretary of State, opened an investigation, as they do with a lot of these complaints, and they asked True the Vote, hey, you said you had a bunch of video and cell phone data for this. Can you give it to us? And True the Vote said, no, thank you. We really don't want to give that to you. We have non-disclosure agreements with people. It's protected information. We'd rather not. And the state of Georgia said, no, we really, really want you to. Here's a subpoena, if you like, because True the Vote had said in interviews. In fact, it's like, we're for confidentiality reasons we can't give it, but like if they subpoena it, like we'll comply. So yeah, state of Georgia subpoenaed them. It will shock you to learn they did not comply with that subpoena. They made up reasons for that. Their attorneys gave excuses and whatnot. Finally, the state of Georgia just flat out sued them for failure to comply with that subpoena. There's that subpoena, which they didn't comply with. These are the different things they asked for. Give us your information, give us the name of the individuals who provided you information, the identity of your team of researchers. You said you had a team of researchers. Who are they? What's the name of the John Doe? Because at one point they had said the John Doe had gotten, I'll come to this in a second, had gotten beaten, went to the hospital, that they paid for his hospital bills. That's why they were protecting his identity, you see, is because his identity had previously leaked. He had been hurt by this, and they wanted to make sure he was protected. So yeah, give us the information on, you said you paid his hospital bills. What's the information on you paid his bills. What's that? In one interview, they said they met his mom at the hospital. Information on his mom, that sort of thing. For instance, here's a tweet from a local fella who incidentally happens to be the second vice chair of the Georgia Republican Party now. If he gets witness protection, he was nearly beaten to death when the GBI leaked his name 7 months ago. Okay. So finally, after they got sued, they complied. They finally answered the questions. Give us your detailed account of the efforts to collect ballots. Yeah, we don't have that, is what they said. We don't have in our possession, custody, or control any responsive items. If we have any other stuff, it's in cold storage. Yeah, do you have these several individuals regarding knowledge of trafficking? Yeah, we don't have that either. Your team of researchers. This is my favorite one of all of these, honestly. What is the identity and contact information of your team of contracted researchers who did your investigation? Yeah, we don't have information about our own team of researchers. Who's the John Doe? Yeah, we don't know the John Doe. Who's the John Doe's mom? Yeah, we don't know her either. You had a Georgia Integrity Hotline. This is supposedly how John Doe how John Doe or some other people at least reached out to you. They've been mildly inconsistent about how yeah, you'll be shocked it's mild. But this goes to their fact that they claim they don't know who John Doe is the primary story they've told about how John Doe reached out to them is through someone who knows Greg Phillips. Like that he knew her mother, John Doe's mother, or something like that. Like this is someone he knew through a personal contact. And now they're saying they don't know who it is. Do you have information on that hotline? Now, we didn't save anything from our election integrity hotline that we were asking people to give us tips for. We didn't save any of it. Do you have any records of the hospital bills? We don't have that. I guess they paid in crypto for all I know. Do you have the identities of any of the people? No, we don't have that either. You claim there were hubs where people went to pick up these ballots. Yeah, we don't know what you're talking about. They said it on the Charlie Kirk show. Now they're just saying they don't recognize what the term means. This came up in some interview about a bartender. They said they don't know. Also, I mentioned earlier, they said, like, prior to the lawsuit, prior to the subpoena, they said we can't share this stuff with you because we are protected by, like, non-disclosure agreements, confidentiality agreements. Like, we have to abide by those. Can you provide any non-disclosure agreements or confidentiality agreements? Yeah, we have no such documents. Yeah. So, here's the thing. This is my theory a little bit. I think the whistleblower is real. I have other friends online who think that he's just a complete fiction, that the True the Vote just made him up entirely to just run a fraud on the Georgia State Election Board. I don't think he's completely fiction. Here's why. Back when, back in November 2020, right as the election was going on, when they were trying to get people to come to them, after the election happened, True the Vote raised a bunch of money. They got this one North Carolina, I think, multimillionaire, billionaire named Fred Eshelman to donate a lot of millions of dollars to them. But because he was doing this, he kind of wanted to see results. He wanted to know what they were getting. And Miss Engelbrecht, again, head of True the Vote, was corresponding with Mr. Eshelman's assistant, telling him, yep, we've got whistleblowers in a couple of different states. The one in Georgia, connected with Stacey Abrams, apparently, is what's said in the very first email about this. Stacey Abrams' name never shows up in a subsequent mention of this whistleblower, but in the first time it does. So Eshelman and his assistant keep asking, like, give us more information on this whistleblower. And the emails that got produced in a lawsuit that was subsequently filed, because he was trying to claw back the donation he gave. Within weeks, he realized, I've made a terrible mistake giving these people money. I would like it back, please. So he sued for it, and these emails ended up getting released as part of the discovery. So in those emails, you can see the back and forth between Eshelman and his people asking, what can you tell us about the whistleblower? And True the Vote saying, yeah, we can't give you any information about the whistleblower. We're making progress, but we can't give you any specifics about stuff. But the most interesting thing that comes up in that is at one point they mentioned, is this one? No, this is one where they mentioned Stacey Abrams. This is them talking about how difficult it was to work with her. Down there at the bottom, it's a little hard to read. It's mentioned that they had agreed to give the Georgia whistleblower a $50,000 bounty. Only document from back then this ever comes up in. And I think that's what's going on here, is because back at the beginning of November, True the Vote had put out a campaign, a whistleblower compensation fund. They'd advertised this like in certain circles online, saying if you are an election whistleblower, if you have information to prove that there was fraud, and again, you don't see the word Dropbox in there, by the way, you'll notice. But if you have any kind of whistleblower activity, that you can bring to us, we have a whistleblower compensation fund to give you money. That's why Eshelman had kind of ponied up those millions in the first place. And when they got sued here in Georgia in a different lawsuit, Miss Engelbrecht got asked about that $50,000, which she said here, this is her writing, that we've offered him $50,000. We've offered to give him an attorney, but giving him $50,000 in cash. Here's how she answered that question in under oath. You offered the $50,000, she was asked. As you stated here in the email, her answer. So, question. So the $50,000 was contingent on the evidence being sufficiently weighty for prosecution. That's what her email said. The $50,000, if it leads to a prosecution. Her answer. No, that is not in actuality what happens. It was phrased, context, it was phrased in this way in the hope that we would be able to keep at least that to try to deal with a very different circumstance. And this gentleman that's not even the correct use of the word, he was all about, I didn't know this person, he called and given the money, and it was very much about the evidence leading to prosecution, but the email says you offered him $50,000 in cash. I know. She bluffs her way through this thing so hard because she can't explain where the $50,000 went through. She tries to explain like it was contingent, it was for the hospital bills, but their other timeline isn't consistent with the story of when he was supposedly in the hospital. That would have been weeks after this. The hospitalization never comes up in those emails from earlier. So Here's what I think happened with the John Doe. I think they put out a whistleblower compensation fund. They advertised it, saying, we will give you money if you have a story. And somebody out there, presumably here in Georgia, possibly in Alabama, depending on their story, realized he could make a quick buck. And he made up this story about being a ballot mule, moving around, moving ballots. And he came to them, and them not doing their due diligence decided, yes, we like your story. Also, they have somebody giving them $1 million. Like, this is a whistleblower. They can tell the Mr. Eshelman they have a whistleblower. So, yeah, he came forward. They believed him. He wanted $50,000 for his story. They said they'd give it to him. But then Eshelman wants proof. They asked the whistleblower for proof. He obviously can't produce any. He made this up for the money. So all of the bit about him being attacked, going into hiding, because at one point they were saying he went into hiding, they didn't know how to contact with him. I think he realized he's never getting his $50,000. And he just decided to give up and leave. Meanwhile, they've hung their hat on the fact that they have a whistleblower. That's what they got all the millions of dollars for. So they want to keep that story up. And that's where they continue to build it off of. And the reason they can't produce the John Doe is because if they ever do actually name the John Doe and anyone talks to him, it'll turn out he was just a con artist, trying to con them as they were trying to con someone else. I mentioned earlier there's a Mr. Andrews in the movie. This is him again. Shortly, some months after the movie 2,000 Mules came out, they put out a book. That's the book. Mr. Andrews and his attorneys sent a letter to Dinesh D'Souza and to True the Vote saying, you've improperly named me as a criminal in your movie. In fact, he'd already been cleared by the state election board around the time the movie came out. So before this book comes out, really like you to withdraw that, because it is defamatory. They cut the release date for this book. Delayed it by a couple of months, then put it out. This is the first edition. Someone I happen to know online managed to get a copy of the first edition that had already been shipped to booksellers. But then they put out the second edition anyway. The book still calls the dude a criminal in a caption. So there is an ongoing defamation suit by Mr. Andrews here in Georgia. Some good stuff has come out of that. It made the news a couple months ago that the producer of the film already settled for an undisclosed amount of money. But yes, Salem Media realized they really don't want to fight with what's on the table here. Dinesh, True the Vote, they're still fighting it out. This is the first video they show in the movie, by the way. I mentioned earlier about their geo-tracking. They showed this geo-tracking in the movie. They claim this is, in the film, they claim this is cell phone data showing someone going, I think, to 27 drop boxes across 6 metro Atlanta counties. I think it's from Newton into Fulton and Gwinnett and all that sort of thing. They admitted later on, it's like, yeah, this is not actually an accurate map of his 27 visits or his path, but he did it. This is creative license with that path. This Dropbox specifically, we've identified where it is. It's not on that map, nonetheless. I thought it would be neat to get something new here for this presentation. So last week I emailed Ms. Engelbrecht and just asked her, hey, I'm giving a presentation. Can you give me the actual path he did? If this was creative license, give me the actual data. And she responded, someone from True the Vote responded to me, thank you for reaching out. But we are currently in a lawsuit over the geospatial project, so we can't give you that information. Okay. So I email her back and say, that's unfortunate, I'll give it up. But in the first video, you showed that one guy, identified him specifically, so there's no confusion, the bald black guy in the first video. Can you just fill me in on the date and time for that video? Because they claimed in the movie that this was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm relatively certain it's not. But just the date and time stamp for that. And she wrote back again to say, I'm sorry, I can't, we are in active litigation, everything's open to discovery, so we can't comment on that at all. As mentioned earlier, I'm a lawyer, I don't believe this, but that's not how discovery works. But, amusingly enough, after I sent the email, there were some more filings in Mr. Andrews' lawsuit that I mentioned a second ago. His attorneys, there's apparently been a discovery dispute between True the Vote and Dinesh D'Souza and Mr. Andrews' attorneys. Shockingly, True the Vote and Dinesh don't want to turn over a bunch of information in this lawsuit. And one of the things they don't want to turn over is certain information regarding their geo-trafficking project. And what I find funny is the fact, despite the fact that she just told me in an email, we are currently in a lawsuit over the geospatial project. They wrote in a letter to Mr. Andrews' attorney, yeah, we don't want to produce that data because this case isn't about the geospatial data. Yeah, so they're just fibbing about that. I did have this too. Because True the Vote, unfortunately, is a 501c3 nonprofit. And yes, I have filed an IRS complaint against them. But I hinted earlier there are certain signs of grifting activity with them. For instance, I mentioned earlier at the top, Mr. Phillips and his insistence, like, we can't finish that audit, unless we're given like a lot more money. Because they're a nonprofit, they have to file 990 returns. They have brought in a lot more money in the last few years since the 2020 election. And between 2020 and 2022, they reported spending just shy of $1 million on app and website development. Yeah, I haven't built an app, but given what I've heard about the apps they've made so far, it's like they're not getting good value for their money. But yeah, as far as anyone can tell, the person who does their app and website development is Greg Phillips. There's also like millions of dollars here for data purchasing and analysis. Also a bunch of money for litigation support. It's not clear if that's going to attorneys or not, but it certainly seems that as with the millions of dollars they're bringing in, a lot of that $1 million is getting paid out to Greg Phillips's company. So that's all I have on them. More at home here in Georgia. We have an organization called Voter GA. They claim to be a nonpartisan organization interested in election integrity. You can tell how nonpartisan they are from this photo at a rally wearing all their Trump paraphernalia. And from this tweet from the president of the Voter GA, Garland Favorito, where he, in a very nonpartisan way, was speaking at a Trump rally. What? Oh, okay. Am I that close to it? Okay, sure, yeah, all right. Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah, I'll go through this. Yeah. To touch on other conspiracy theories for a minute, Mr. Favorito, he's a known quantity here in Atlanta, in Georgia now. He's frequent presence at the state election boards. He's a voice that's heard by 3 of the members of a majority of that board now. Has a lot of influence. A number of years ago, he wrote a book. This book, because I tracked it down. The second edition came out after 9/11. And the acknowledgments page, on the first page, there names some people I've heard of, some people I haven't. Who here has heard of Willis Carto? Anyone? He's the third acknowledgement here. He is the founder of the Institute for Historical Review, one of the most notorious Holocaust denial organizations out there. And he's the third credit acknowledgement in Mr. Favorito's book. Various conspiracy theories espoused in this book. Oswald couldn't have killed JFK. Also, there's a conspiracy to kill Martin Luther King. Also, Robert Kennedy, despite the fact Robert Kennedy was shot at basically point-blank range. There was a conspiracy for Vince Foster, for the Oklahoma City bombing, for the TWA 800, shot down by a missile. He talks about the Council on Foreign Relations. He connects Bill Clinton to the murder of a Starbucks manager. Also claims that there was some drug trafficking that Bill Clinton was involved in, and the deaths of a couple of teens in Arkansas in 1987, which were also connected to Clinton's mom. He kind of suggests Slobodan Milosevic was framed. A lot of talking here about one world government, about global fascist dictatorship. Chemtrails show up. In fact, when he says that on 9/11, when he was out in, where was it, Kansas City, he starts off his story about learning about 9/11 by looking up in the sky and claiming he saw chemtrails. Let's see. He refers to a satanic Omaha-based child sex slave operation. He ties John Hinckley, the man who shot Ronald Reagan, to George H.W. Bush. We got the New World Order. We got he claims the 16th Amendment, which instituted the income tax, is fraudulent. And of course, the thing that he added in this book, in the second edition, is he claims that Osama bin Laden was more or less framed for 9/11. And that he doesn't want to outright say it, but he spends a couple of chapters there insinuating and suggesting it's like, make up your minds for yourself, but here's reasons to think why Israel might be behind 9/11. So he currently, oh, by the way, he also reproduces 2 full pages there. This is a quote in the book, which is just him quoting from National Vanguard Books, which is a list of Jews in the media. Also, he was a speaker at DragonCon last year. Not on this track. I'm not going to say which track because I'm not sure it's my place. But he was. Huh? Tell you? He was a panelist on the EFF track. Yeah, I made an issue about it. His co-panelist, I believe, was not consulted about that. But this was the flyer that was in that panel. It distributed in seats. I had some questions for him at that panel, but I can't go into that. But making various conspiratorial claims in this. He filed a lawsuit in Spalding County, naming every county in Georgia. There it is. There it is. I've been told they had to buy new equipment simply to handle like 159 defendants. Funny thing about voter GA, in early 2020, they were very pro-absentee ballot. This is the safest way to do it. For years, voter GA's issue was with ballot machines. They thought those were going to be trouble. Those could be hacked. That's the problem. But once the 2020 election happens the way it does, oh no, now there's a massive problem with absentee ballots. Those are the ones that are troublesome. We are going to do, they filed a lawsuit here in Fulton County. As you see, they united with the Pulitzer expert team. That would be Jovan, however, Hutton Pulitzer. He was someone that Rudy Giuliani and all brought to speak in front of the Georgia Senate Committee in December of 2020. He is also a massive crank. He invented the Q-Cat. Some of you may be familiar with that back in the day. Widely regarded as one of the worst gadgets ever made. He has a bunch of treasure hunting books on Amazon, which are basically the same thing, because he claims to be a treasure hunter. He's appeared on the History Channel on the Curse of Oak Island because he thinks the Ark of the Covenant is in Canada. It's funny to watch that clip too, is because like he's on a show where like these people are there to listen to conspiracy theories, and even they're like, we're not so sure. Like it said, the Ark's in Canada. Part of his presentation to the Georgia Senate was claiming that like these ballots from Buckhead, Georgia, these ballots from Roswell, Georgia, showed that like sketchy things were going on. Yeah. This says Buckhead, Georgia. You can't read it up there in the top corner. One of the senators tried to point this out to him, and he was very, very stubborn about acknowledging it. He pulled the data for the wrong Buckhead. Buckhead, Georgia, that he thought he was talking about is a community just north of here. It's where a lot of businesses are located. But there's an actual city of Buckhead, Georgia, which is a rural county. He didn't realize this because he's not from Georgia, and he's a terrible researcher. Nonetheless, the Senate committee produced a whole report. I said it wasn't a report. It was just sort of a summary. A bunch of the conspiracy theorists who cover this like to call it a report because it gives it more credibility. But no, it's just the commissioner, the chairman, now retired senator, wrote it all up. And of course, all of that led to, for example, the Trump campaign suing and claiming various things, that there were like 2,500 felons who voted in Georgia. There weren't. They claimed there were 66,000 underage voters who voted in Georgia. There weren't. That would literally be like half the 17-year-olds in the entire state of Georgia. 2,400 people not registered. I think there were 0, and so on. At one point, they claimed there's a whole story. I'm trying to fast forward through some of this for questions, but a frequent thing you'll hear about is that there was a water leak at State Farm Arena that stalled out balloting. No, that was in the morning, like before they counted. You can see the water leak. Can I play this here? Is it going to play as a video? It might not. But no, this video was online at one point. It's at 3 o'clock in the morning. They had this all cleaned up before people started ballots. People are just wrong. Or is this going to play it? I didn't want to play it. It doesn't matter. They also claimed, one of Trump's complaints. Do I have it later here? No, there's not. Was referred to a scammer woman there, Ruby Freeman, that they had pulled ballots out from under a table and had counted them. During that Senate hearing, one woman had claimed that she'd reviewed all this video. I think an attorney out of Texas, I want to say. And that, but no, literally an hour earlier, that's when they put the ballots under the table. They put them, if you watch the video, they put them under the table. An hour later, they pull them back out. There's nothing secret. Conspiracies in 2016, conspiracies in 2018, course conspiracies in 2020. This was recent. I had a little thing go viral last week. There is a organization called the National Federation of Republican Assemblies. There's a Georgia group called the Georgia Republican Assembly, which is headed up by a couple of attorneys who I've met. One of those attorneys is also the head of the national organization. Sometime back, they passed a resolution, specifically last October, stating that espousing the birther definition of natural-born citizen, claiming that Nikki Haley and Vivek Ramaswamy and Kamala Harris are not natural-born citizens and are not eligible to be president. And they claimed in this resolution that they passed, according to the cover of the resolution, the report said it was unanimously passed by the convention. They said, precedent-setting U.S. Supreme Court cases support their conclusion about Kamala Harris and Nikki Haley. And among the cases they cited was the Dred Scott decision. And when the president of the organization was asked about this by, I think, the Independent newspaper, he doubled down on it. And just said, like, it's silly to, like, focus on one part of the case, as if there are other parts of the Dred Scott decision other than slavery is legal and black people aren't citizens. I didn't want to end on that note, so I thought I had pulled up something else funny to add, which is that one of the guys, one of the attorneys who was trying to push through election conspiracy theories in late 2020 and early 2021 in the Trump White House was Jeffrey Clark. He was an assistant, someone in the Department of Justice, but was trying to finagle his way into being like Attorney General after Bill Barr left. And the response he got from one other attorney, as he's trying to get in there, put out a letter claiming that the AG was investigating Georgia and all that, had this quote from someone saying, "I made the point that Jeff Clark is not even competent to serve as Attorney General. He's never been a criminal attorney. He's never conducted a criminal investigation in his life. He's never been in front of a grand jury, much less a trial jury. You're an environmental lawyer. How about you go back to your office and we'll call you when there's an oil spill?" So yes, I thought that was slightly more lighthearted than Dred Scott, at least. But anyhow, I've left, thankfully, a few minutes here. If there are any questions.
Hi.
Hey.
So you have highlighted the inefficiencies in our legal system. So I have two questions. Do you think that these lawyers are just inept and they don't know what they're doing, and they're just willingly introducing these phony arguments? And if all of this keeps going on, especially with the Supreme Court, do you think that this goes bigger in our society, that they are already eroding our institutions? Thank you.
Well, thank you. No, I admit I'm somewhat concerned. At the same time, I do think I take some faith in the fact that the system's worked up till now. Like we clearly have a lot of people with level heads in place already. Um, uh, I have massive respect for Brad Raffensperger, our Secretary of State here, and for Gabriel Sterling, who've managed to run a pretty good game here in Georgia and keep tabs on things, and consistently dispel various conspiracy theories and lies that are out there in the media. There are bad actors, though. There are people who are working from various motivated reasoning and all, and it's important to be a check on them, and to call that out. And the trouble is when you get some of those motivated people into positions where they can exercise power, and especially where they're not just a minority voice, but a majority voice, where they're not just a nuisance, but can actually create havoc. It's just important to be diligent, to get out there and vote and expect, good things from everyone. I wish I had a better answer, but yeah. Next.
Hi, so I'm in Reno, Nevada, and we have locals there who also promote ballot box conspiracies. They actually temporarily got the county board not to certify our primary election. I'm wondering if you see much evidence that these are just local groups of different people who believe these things, or if there's any kind of national coordination of these, to what extent one or the other. Thanks.
I'm not sure if there's any one singular national one. I know, for example, like True the Vote has been trying to run national organizations. They've been trying to, specifically in recent weeks and months, trying to develop operations in different states. They have like a sheriff's project going on and things like that. I think like a constitutional sheriff type operation. But no, there are outfits out there that are trying to influence things in different states, especially swing states, honestly. But at its heart, it is kind of a sort of a somewhat disorganized. I don't think anyone has come out on top of being singularly in charge, but multiple people are trying it.
On the 2000 Mules movie and the production company,
Mhm.
it's clear they don't have any real data. It was all made up.
Yeah.
Under the presumption that they actually do have some cell tracking data and it does show what they claim it does, they just won't turn over for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Has anyone questioned how they got a hold of that data? That's just not something you can walk in and make a FOIA request for.
No, it's not. That's one of the things that's at least plausible in their story, which is not that they're pulling like not necessarily the geo-tracking data, the various apps that will like keep certain data on your phone just by having like the location services turned on for it. You can apparently buy that data from those companies independently. Given my limited technical knowledge, I don't know how detailed that is, to be honest. There's something that can apparently be gleaned from that.
I'm not sure, but I would expect that to be anonymized data.
It is anonymized data. You're absolutely correct about that. It very much is anonymized data. Nonetheless, where I get suspect and when they're trying to claim why they can't turn anything over and why they haven't identified anyone, when they've specifically claimed like, oh, we can identify these phones to where they travel within like feet of where their location. Well, obviously that phone's going to sit somewhere at night for like 8 hours at a time. You could trace that to a home pretty easily. But you're absolutely right. It is anonymized.
The other case is weak.
Yeah, it is.
So we've been talking about more modern cases, but there was something in 2017 where some server data was deleted by the Center for Election Systems at Kennesaw State University. Was that ever resolved? Do you know?
I'm not immediately familiar with that, but I mean I don't know what data they specifically would have that wouldn't be in the possession of the state.
Well, that was the thing. I believe the state requested it, kind of sued them, and then after they got sued, they immediately deleted it. So
Yeah.
it became a big kerfuffle for a bit. Okay.
The old voting, the old voting, they used to have the old.
Yeah, you can step up. Yeah.
I'm sorry, they
That's fine.
used to have the older. I live in Georgia, so
sure.
the old
The old ballots, the
old
voting
ballot
system.
system, and that was the system that Kennesaw State had been pulling they had been basically, Kennesaw State University had they were basically trying to kind of track that system.
Yeah.
And then that data got deleted.
Oh, yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
the question.
I can't speak to it with any specificity. I don't know it. My immediate instinct would just be always to assume incompetence rather than malice. It's like, yeah, someone screwed up and deleted something. It's
Okay.
yeah. Thanks.
So
You have another question?
as I mentioned, I'm a Georgia voter. So I have I've heard about the various kind of questionable, sketchy new policies from the Georgia Election Board
Mhm.
that I know that even Raffensperger is not a fan of.
Mhm.
I read somewhere, maybe it was Greg Bluestein from the AJC recently mentioned that Governor Kemp has looked into what is his powers to possibly removing some of those people from the
Yeah.
election boards. Now, I also know that Trump recently said that he's cool with Kemp again, which is, let's just see how long that lasts, because, that's a weird dynamic there. So I'm wondering, because obviously I want our elections to be secure in this
Yeah.
state, because I am, an active voter, but how much do we really want to trust Kemp if do we think that Kemp's potentially playing both sides there? I mean, I think he is, but
Yes. No. And the thing is, in that context, I don't think Kemp has changed anything, to be fair to him. Like, he's always been firm along the lines like he's just going to endorse the Republican nominee.
of course,
Yeah.
that I understand.
It's Trump that finally made the heel turn there and then said, like, I've been bashing Kemp for so long, and now I'm going to turn around. Because he needs Kemp's, he needs to be on good terms with Kemp to win Georgia voters. No, I think Kemp appointed the chairman, John Furbia, who frankly has been a good addition to the board. He didn't specifically have any prior election experience. He was a former official with Waffle House. I wasn't sure what to expect from him, but honestly, I've watched these things. He's good. He's having to learn on the job a little bit, but he has a good sense for how these meetings need to be run. He has a good sense for what is and isn't the right role of his board. And he has been privately and sometimes publicly irritated with some of what his board has been doing. I made an open records request for them just the other week when 3 members of the board decided to hold their own special little meeting without the chairman there. And through open records, I got the email he sent, chewing them out afterwards. It's
Nice.
like, that was not acceptable. We are not acknowledging that. We're not scheduling any more meetings without me. I told you, me and one other person were not available. This is out of line. And so, yeah, he's Kemp's nominee. So I think Kemp has the right instinct here.
I mean, I don't necessarily trust Kemp because I've never liked Kemp, but at least the integrity of elections in general in the state of Georgia, I think he's kind of on the level with Raffensperger.
I think he is.
Because he doesn't want the reputation of the state to go to shit, which I can accept, even though I don't like Kemp.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I have a really bad.
I think
I'm
personally,
nervous. I'm very nervous.
Personally, I think he asked Attorney General Chris Carr for an opinion, basically for validation, because the statute seems to suggest he already has that power, honestly. And if he's already has an instinct that that's maybe what he wants to do for one or more of those people, who then get reappointed by the same people who got to appoint the originals, having the Attorney General's backing for that gives it a little more public support. So we'll wait and see, but that's kind of what I think Kemp might be doing.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hey.
I want to take to a slight issue to the way you approached some of your arguments.
Okay.
Which is to bring out nutcases and list all the things that they've got wrong and imply that just because they've got all this other stuff wrong, that every conspiracy theory they've got has been wrong. The stopped clock is right twice a day applies even to crazy people.
Oh, sure.
So you went to the elections where the water main break stopped the count.
It didn't.
I'm not saying it did. What I'm saying is that the election officials were told, the election checkers, what's their official term?
The
poll watchers.
The watchers.
They were told that they were quitting counting for the evening and everybody go home. They're not going to count anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then they continued counting for several hours.
Mm-hmm.
And during that several hours break, is when we had that weird dogleg where Biden votes jumped dramatically and surpassed Trump, and then leveled off after that. There was only one short period of time where the jump occurred. A conspiracy theorist could look at that and say, wait a minute, the poll watchers are gone. We had this sudden jump that was never been seen before in counting or since. And it only happened once the poll watchers were told that we're going to stop counting because there was a water leak. A conspiracy theorist might have something to go with that.
I will try to address that as quickly as I can to get to the folks behind you.
I will get out of the way.
But sure, that's fine. But one, first of all, it had nothing to do with the water leak. The water leak was, huh? But no, they weren't told it had to do with the water leak. No one was told it had to do with the water leak. They were told they were just done for the night. The water leak had been that morning.
Okay.
The water leak is utterly unrelated. Yes.
Now explain why they quit.
But here's why. It's because at State Farm Arena, the on-site manager had decided, look, the folks have been working all day. It is now 10 o'clock at night. People are tired. We're going to wrap up for the evening. We're going to come back tomorrow morning. All good. So they started by, I showed earlier, I ran past it a little bit, when they put those ballots under a table. Because they were packing up for the night. You can watch it on the video. They were packing up for the night. They were putting things up, locking them into containers, putting them away. And you can see on the video, which I think the website may or may not still be up, but you can see on the video when the on-site manager gets a call, because he's getting a call from his supervisor in Fulton County. I think it was Richard Barron, telling him, it's like, I just got word you're shutting down for the night. No. Like, it's only 11 o'clock. I expect y'all to keep going.
Call the poll watchers back.
They screwed up. They didn't do call the poll. But they don't have the phone numbers of the poll watchers, I don't think. But, no. Yeah.
Yell back and forth.
Yeah. Sure, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine.
30 seconds.
Oh, that's 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Hi, how you doing? Thank you, by the way, for the
Yeah.
presentations. One of the things is, I did notice a lot of interjection of ad hominem and stuff. From your opinion, it seemed very biased. I would have liked to have seen a little more on, a little
You have
more
a question?
balanced. Yes, I do. One of the things was about the voting machines, and wanted to talk to you about that and the breaches that were happening with the voting machines.
Do you have a question?
What do you feel happened with the voting machines and the breaches? Do you have any information on that, by the way?
In 2020?
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe there was any particularly inappropriate machine breaches of the voting machines.
There weren't any at all?
No, I'm not familiar with the ones you're referring to.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'm gonna have to let y'all argue that out over by the escalators, if you don't mind. But are you free to go over and talk at the table?
table? Yes,
at
I
the
am. That's
Skeptic
fine,
Track
yes.
table? Yes.
Yes.
So we have a table over by the escalators. If you have any other questions, Loren has said he'd be happy to come talk
Yep.
to you there. I'm sorry, we gotta.
Oh, can I
move-
plug one last thing?
Yes, absolutely.
All right.
I wanted to give you time to do a
Sure.
shameless plug.
Yeah, if I can plug one last thing. In addition to like Twitter, you can find me at Loren Collins, but also, I don't know if you can pull the last slide up there. Yes, like I mentioned, I'm an attorney. I also do theater here in town. So the one thing I have coming up is I am helping to produce the 14th version of this. For 25 years, the Atlanta Bar Association has been putting on an original all-lawyer musical. So this November, the weekend after the election, we are doing a Courthouse Line 13, Nightmare on 14th Street. I appear in it as a vampire lawyer, but we're very proud of it. You can find it, if you're local and want to see it, you can find information at bardshow.com. But yeah, it should be a unique experience if you're around.
That's awesome. Okay, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for coming. Y'all can talk to Loren over by the escalators. Thank you.